All right, I'm going to say we can go ahead and get started just to make the best use of everyone's time, and hopefully we'll have some more students joining throughout. We did tell them they can join anytime throughout the hour in case they have a few in between classes, whatever they're doing. So to the students, thank you all for joining us. Again, if you don't know me, my name's Alyssa, and we also have Michelle here from Career Services. So thank you all. We have representatives here today to talk about careers and impact. So we are going to get started just with some introductions. So Chad, Quinn, John, if you don't mind just giving us a rundown of, your position, your organization, any type of, just general background. So Quinn, why don't we start with you?
Thanks, Alyssa, and good afternoon, everybody. My name is Quinn Walker. I work for AmeriCorps NCCC, or National Civilian Community Corps. It's one of 3 branches of AmeriCorps, which is a federal government agency, kind of like the domestic version of the Peace Corps. And so they provide opportunities for individuals across the country to serve in a variety of ways in a variety of communities across the country. What's unique about AmeriCorps NCCC, and I know this is just an introduction, so I won't go into too much detail, but it's a residential team-based program. And so young adults 18 to 26 have the ability to travel around the country doing short-term, high-impact projects. And so we work a lot in disaster response and recovery, environmental stewardship, food insecurity, and we have 4 different regions, although teams can be deployed anywhere in the United States depending on the situation. I'm in one of the campuses out of Sacramento, California, and we actually have about 250 AmeriCorps members from all walks of life, some who are taking a gap year from college, some who are taking a gap year before they start a master's degree, some who are just starting a career and want to leverage their AmeriCorps experience to get a job with the federal government or nonprofit organizations. And then pretty soon, in just about 2 weeks, they're going to have their first deployment. And so they'll go out and spend 3 months approximately serving with a different organization across the Western United States. So a food bank, a national forest, a Boys and Girls Club, a Habitat for Humanity site. It really can depend on the situation. And I work in the community relations side of things. So I do anything I can to expand awareness about the AmeriCorps program and the AmeriCorps NCCC. It's like commonly referred to that AmeriCorps is the government's top secret. So it's not the nuclear codes, it's actually AmeriCorps, because not enough young people know about it and are not signing up as much as we would like them to. And so I've been in this role for about 2.5 years, and I'm always excited to be working with John and Chad, because when I was 18, I did the City Year program as well before starting undergrad. And then after college, I joined the Peace Corps and served in the Republic of Moldova for a little over 2 years. And so both of those programs are near and dear to my heart.
Awesome. I can go next, as I think it's an easy segue. Hi, everyone. My name is Chad Fraca. I'm a recruiter with City Year. And much like Quinn was saying, AmeriCorps is a huge organization that does actually not employ enough, but does employ about 80,000 volunteers every single year. And some of those do obviously go to AmeriCorps NCCC. And then there's others that go to different state and national programs that are sponsored basically to run AmeriCorps programs. And so that's exactly what City Year is. We're a national organization, nonprofit, education focused. So mostly going to be doing your service at a school-based site, working alongside a partner teacher, looking to, like what I call, what my former Mayor of Stockton called, try to upset the setup of the inequities that we see in our education system. So shout out to Michael Tubbs. I myself am a City Year alum. I joined in City Year Sacramento in 2014, 2015. I kind of joined probably a lot like many people, because they didn't really know exactly what they wanted to do with their life. I had an idea. I knew I wanted to work with kids. I knew I wanted to make an impact, but I really didn't know like what that meant or what that looked like. And I thought maybe I wanted to be a teacher. So I joined. I quickly found out that I actually did not want to be a teacher, and that is okay. That is not our goal for the program. Our real goal for the program is a double bottom line. So the one bottom line obviously is to serve our students in the communities that we serve in our 29 city locations, and be able to get them back on track and on time to graduate. That's our number one bottom line. And our number two is our core members. So you all, our 17 and 25-year-olds, and when you graduate from our program, our goal is to be able to have that system of impact continue on throughout all different branches of business and work life throughout the United States. That could be through nonprofit, education, and school, or going back to school, healthcare, business, law. We have a lot of different alumni that go to different locations, and really what we desire is that young people will now hopefully take this experience that was deeply impactful to them, both personally and professionally, and move into spaces of privilege so that you can advocate for folks just like the students that you served, just like the people that you are hopefully serving, to be able to make real change and impact. So that's kind of our long-term approach and effect. And I'll pass it over to John.
Sounds good, thank you. And Quinn mentioned that he's been in his role for about 2.5 years. Quinn had my role before me, so I've been in my role for 2.5 years. So I'm the Peace Corps recruiter based out of Sacramento. And a little quick overview of Peace Corps. I know we're going to go into the extended what the application programs are like here in a minute. But Peace Corps is a 27-month service opportunity. So that's one way to differentiate Peace Corps from AmeriCorps and City Year is that it is 2 years. It's 2 years with 3 months of training. We are entirely outside of America. So whereas AmeriCorps is in America, Peace Corps is entirely abroad. That's one thing to note too. We have 6 different sectors. So you can be a teacher. I myself was an English teacher in Ethiopia, where I served there for 2 years. So there's education, community economic development, agriculture, youth and development, health, and environmental. Those are the 6 different sectors. So basically, no matter what you'll be doing, you'll be a teacher in that capacity. Our goals as an organization is we have 3 goals. Goal 1 is to have trained Americans go abroad and teach skills. Goal 2 is to learn from the people that you are interacting with, right? Because they are a wealth of information themselves. And goal 3 is to bring that information that you've learned about culture, about language, and teach other Americans, right? It is a cultural exchange when you're in the Peace Corps. So very in the quick synopsis of what the Peace Corps is, you are dedicating 2 years of your life to living in probably a small rural area and in a different country. We really preach living sustainably in small settings because that is why it's 2 years, because in America, right, the cultural context of living here. That's why it's a little bit, when going into an American classroom in City Year, you will understand that context, right? You were probably in one yourself. Whereas in Peace Corps, you had no idea what it's like to live in Ethiopia. That's why it takes a little bit more time when you're joining the Peace Corps. So very, very briefly, that's a little bit about what the Peace Corps is, and I'll go and get into a little more here in a minute or two.
Awesome. Thank you so much all again for joining us. So we're going to get into a little bit of a kind of roundtable discussion, and then we'll do some Q&A at the end. But students, if any questions come up while we're going through some discussion, feel free to drop them in the chat and we'll make sure to answer them. So first question is, what kinds of opportunities are available with your organizations right now? So John, I'll throw it back to you first.
Sure, that sounds good. And Peace Corps is uniquely affected by COVID-19. So I think from Chad and Quinn, you're gonna get like, we're open for business, whereas Peace Corps is not quite the same, right? So because you're going abroad, we are uniquely affected by COVID-19, right? So vaccines are playing a big part in us rolling back out, but we still haven't had a full-fledged kind of reopening. So you can still apply like normal, and we have our concrete plans to re-enter here in the coming months, but we are subject to the whims of countries and the whims of what this COVID-19 has done here. So it's a 9-month application process, so it's not quick because you have to get a medical exam, you have to do an interview like that, you have to get a Peace Corps passport. So from the day that you apply, from the day that you leave this country and join the Peace Corps is about 9 months. So with that being said, we will hopefully be back up and running no problem within that time. So that's why our applications are unaffected. But right now, we have no volunteers in the field. So I always want to be transparent as possible about that, where you can apply. We have our concrete plans for getting back, but we don't have volunteers in the field at this very moment. So you can check out our website. We operate in 60 different countries, and it'll list a little bit about what the opportunities are between those 6 different sectors. And just give a quick breakdown. Normally, about 25% of our positions are in Latin America, 50% in Africa, and 25% in Eastern Europe and Asia. So that gives you a little breakdown of where the positions are. You can apply right now. And I would also say, kind of talk to me if you're like, you know what, I'm really interested in serving this sector, or I'm really interested in this one country, I'm interested in this region, because we have a lot of flexibility in how you apply. But yeah, overall, that's we are uniquely affected by COVID-19, and the vaccines are playing a big role in us being able to put volunteers back in the field. But as of right now, we are, we have a plan, and that's what we have.
Cool. Thanks, John. Hopefully we can get all the awesome volunteers back out there soon. With City Year, we work in schools. And so the school districts, we serve in 350 plus schools across the country. And every school district has their own things and their own ways of being able to be impacted by COVID-19 and mandates. And so City Year, as an organization, as of November 19th, will require all staff and AmeriCorps members to be fully vaccinated in order to serve. And this is really coming from our board of directors and our CEO and top down, really following the directions of the CDC and really just being able to get ahead of the game, especially because last time I checked, it was like 19 school districts are requiring any staff to be able to be vaccinated to show up to work with students. And so in order for us to continue to do our work, we want to make sure we get ahead of the game and make sure all of our core members are going to be able to be available. With that being said, we also have mid-year positions. So for those of you who are traditionally City Year, you would apply to City Year during your senior year, and then you would graduate, and then you would start City Year like late July, early August, and go through the middle of June, like a typical school year. Some people obviously graduate in the fall. Some people didn't find a position for the fall or are still looking for a new position. We have mid-year positions that start December 6th. So the last day to apply to our mid-year position would be November 10th at the very, very latest. I recommend you getting in your application sooner than later, and then you would start December 6th and go through the middle of June. So most of the benefits are pretty much the same with the exception of the education award. We'll talk about benefits later, but essentially we still have open positions right now. And then we also are actively recruiting for next year as well. So we have 2 open positions that are kind of happening. And just wanted to mention all that. Yeah, I'll pass it to Quinn.
Thanks, Chad. And similar to City Year, AmeriCorps NCCC is also establishing a vaccination mandate for all of our incoming Corps members starting in November. So that's a new change to our policy. AmeriCorps NCCC is unique in that we have been fully operational throughout the pandemic. We did do a brief suspension in March and April of 2020, but then brought all of our members back to serve as safely as possible. What we do is we're a team-based organization, so we form teams of about 8 to 12 members, and essentially they create a family unit in a bubble, and then they go off to serve with different nonprofit and government organizations across the country. And what makes AmeriCorps NCCC unique and the ability that we were able to serve and continue to serve throughout the pandemic is that we're kind of like that short-term, high-impact emergency response. And so if you think about the different organizations NCCC works with, we partner with Habitat for Humanity, we partner with food banks, and as you can imagine, affordable housing and food insecurity doesn't go away just because of the pandemic. In fact, it gets exacerbated and gets worse. And so AmeriCorps NCCC is kind of able to go into those communities and organizations and bridge that gap. I mean, think about it in the context of, Habitat is almost completely reliant on volunteers, a steady supply of volunteers to come in and help construct these houses for needy families. And when the pandemic hit, there was obviously a big shortage in volunteers that were able to come in physically and serve. And so AmeriCorps NCCC was able to bridge that gap. AmeriCorps NCCC was also going and partnering with food banks across the country. And for those vulnerable seniors who couldn't leave their house to go to a food bank in person. AmeriCorps NCCC members were organizing food deliveries directly to the home of those homebound seniors across the country. And so again, AmeriCorps NCCC, it's fully operational. We have core member positions as well as team leader positions. Team leaders kind of manage the interpersonal dynamics of a group to 8 to 12, 18 to 26-year-olds, and also are the main liaison with a project sponsor. And a project sponsor could be a Habitat for Humanity director or the leader of a local nonprofit organization that is asking for AmeriCorps NCCC support. We also did a lot of COVID-19 vaccination support when they had those real large-scale vaccination sites, like the Oakland Coliseum, for example, or different large parts of the country where they opened it up to thousands of vehicles driving in every day to get vaccines. NCCC played an important role in facilitating that and managing logistics and doing medical scribing. That's tapered off quite a bit as more Americans have gotten vaccinated, thankfully, and so that's not as much of a priority, and we've kind of transitioned back to more traditional work. And so again, that's environmental restoration and stewardship, affordable housing construction, food insecurity projects, and long-term disaster recovery and response. So for example, we have AmeriCorps teams responding to Hurricane Ida right now and helping register survivors for disaster support and assistance. We have members that continue to serve in places like Paradise, California, who's still recovering from the devastating Camp Fire from a few years back. And so we're on the ground, boots on the ground, and have been there, and it's a great opportunity to serve your country. So.
Awesome, super insightful. So our next question, John, I know you touched on this a little bit, so this will be if there's anything you want to add, but the question is, what types of locations do you all offer opportunities in, and how can students potentially go about, if there's different places you have to apply for different positions, that kind of stuff. So Chad, we'll start with you this time.
Cool, yeah, so as I mentioned, City Year is in 29 different cities across the country. So we were originally founded in Boston over 30 years ago. And so a big portion of our sites are located in the Northeast. Shout out to New Hampshire for Quinn here, former alum. And then we kind of make our way all the way south to Florida. We have 3 sites in Florida: Orlando and Jacksonville and Miami. We have 2 in Texas, Dallas and San Antonio. And on the West Coast here, if you're obviously more of the West Coast people apply to West Coast sites. The West sites are Seattle, Sacramento, San Jose, and Los Angeles, as well as Denver. And so different sites have different sizes and size cores. So Sacramento has probably a little bit of the lower side of a size at 66 core members. Whereas Los Angeles has 250. Seattle and San Jose kind of have that 100 to 120 range, which is our pretty average site. It's most popular range, I think, across the country. And you don't have to apply to different positions. Every site has the same position, the same job posting, but the opportunity is you get to decide where you want to apply. So you can say, I want to stay in Sacramento and I'm only going to apply to City or Sacramento and stay in the Northern Central Valley of California. Or you can say, you know what, I'm actually interested in serving at any site and I'm going to serve where most needed. And so you would pick your top 3 and then we would just place you at one of our most high need sites. High need sites come from a couple different reasons. Number one, maybe a core size has changed and maybe we just need additional volunteers there. Maybe we're having a hard time recruiting locally with that region. Or maybe they gained additional sponsorships through different school districts and gained more AmeriCorps slots to be able to fill more schools. So there's a couple different reasons, but ultimately you get to decide how you want to apply. And yeah, I think that's it. I'll pass it over to John.
Sounds good. Yeah, I can add a little bit to where you're applying for the Peace Corps too. It's actually pretty similar to City Year, strangely. So the way it works when you apply in the Peace Corps, you can apply directly to a country. I'll just use my experience of Ethiopia. You can apply directly to Ethiopia and be considered only for there. You can also apply to Ethiopia and select a box that says consider me for other places. So you'll apply to Ethiopia, then be considered for other places. You can get a little more broad. You can apply to Africa. You can say, hey, look, I'm really interested in Africa. Or maybe some people, it's very common to say, hey, I speak Spanish. I really want to serve in Latin America. We have certain requirements, 2 years of college Spanish for Latin American places, or 3 years of high school Spanish or previous fluency. Those are the only language requirements we have there. 75% of our positions do not require language. And so you can apply directly to a country, you can apply to a region, or you can say, hey, serve where needed most. I don't care where I go. And Peace Corps will choose for you. That's actually what I did. I had never left the country before joining the Peace Corps. So I said, how can I decide anywhere? So they selected Ethiopia for me. So there is a little bit of leeway. Basically, we want to put you somewhere where you'll be successful. So it's very much, we try to be as transparent and flexible as possible in your application. But ultimately, like if you say, hey, look, I'm interested in serving in Africa and you don't like your choice, we'll be like, well, then why'd you make that decision? So once you are locked in, then locked in with your flexibility, then you're kind of locked in there. But yeah, just to add a little bit of context there, and 25% of our positions are in Latin America, 50% in Africa, and 25% in Eastern Europe and Asia. So I think that pretty much covers about the locations and opportunities and how the mechanisms for applying. And pass off to Quinn.
Yeah, and thanks, John. And I did the same thing when I applied to Peace Corps. Was kind of allowed Peace Corps to send me where they needed me, and then got found out I was going to Moldova, a country I had never even heard of before, and then got to spend 2.5 years there. And then you know the culture and the place intimately, and then you learn how to speak a language that you didn't even know existed prior. So it's pretty incredible. And then yeah, thanks for the shout out for City Year in New Hampshire. When I was 18, went and did City Year. I had never left the state of California before, and got to go and live in New England, which is a place that I had heard about, obviously, but it's totally beautiful, unique part of the country. And City Year allowed me to kind of grow and develop all those relationships in a totally different part of the country, and so that was really exciting. Unlike those two programs, AmeriCorps NCCC is not going to stay in one place. And even if you're based out of one of our 4 regional campuses, we have a regional campus in Denver, Colorado, Sacramento, California, Vicksburg, Mississippi, and Vinton, Iowa, those 4. But those are just training facilities. And then after you do a month of training, Corps members get deployed, and essentially they hop into 15-passenger government vans, and they go on these epic road trips across the country to do those short-term, high-impact assignments over the course of their 10 months. So out of Sacramento, we primarily work in the Western region, though. So that would be like Oregon, Washington, Nevada, Montana, Idaho, California. Obviously, we have a lot of projects in California, Hawaii, Alaska. We have teams that are going to Hawaii and Alaska here in just a few weeks, which is exciting for them. They're always pretty stoked when they find out they're going to those places, although Alaska is going to be pretty cold this winter. And then the different regions, right? If you're in Colorado, you're going to be serving in all over Colorado, Missouri, kind of the Midwest, Kansas, things like that. But again, with NCCC, depending on disaster deployment and response, you could really end up going anywhere. So we have teams that go and serve in U.S. territories if there's a disaster, like Puerto Rico or Guam or Saipan. So the opportunities to travel and experience different places is one of the biggest advantages of a program like NCCC. But then again, you kind of miss out on the community integration aspect of something like the Peace Corps or City Year, where you really get to immerse yourself in one specific place throughout your service. You might be in NCCC and you're working with Habitat for Humanity in Bozeman, Montana for 3 months building houses. But then once that 3 months is over, you don't have an option to stay in Montana, right? They might send you to Joshua Tree National Park, and now you're working in Southern California, way different than Bozeman, Montana. And then after 3 months in Joshua Tree National Park, you may go to rural Utah, and now you're working in an area where they also have a totally different landscape and identity and culture in a place like that. And so you really, have an exposure to a lot of different places. And again, there's those 4 regional campuses across the country. so we have one here in Sacramento. It's in McClellan Air Force Base, not that far from here. But again, they're only there for a month of training, and then they deploy. And at that point, they're all over the country. And then depending on what's going on in the country, they may even leave their territory. So we had teams last year who were in Sacramento who drove to Maryland and Delaware, for example, because there was big COVID-19 vaccination centers. And so they literally hopped in a van in Sacramento and drove all the way to Delaware because it was still more affordable than flying them and then paying for a rental car. And so obviously you can either like that idea or could be, depending on how you think about road trips. But a lot of our teams will stop at national parks along the way and explore places like Zion or the Salt Flats, depending on what route they're taking.
Road trip.
That's all awesome. Thank you all for sharing. So this next question, what top qualities do you look for in a candidate, as well as maybe any advice you might have for, what you're looking for on resumes, all that kind of stuff for when students might be applying. So John, I'll start with you on this one.
Sure, and just to touch on what kind of Quinn said, too, if you leave this hour and you're interested in service and you can't figure out one of these three, I love when we do events together because I think they complement each other so well, because you can live in one spot in America, you can live one spot abroad, or if you like traveling in America, we got an opportunity for you. So that's why these programs really complement each other well. But in terms of what we're looking for in a resume, and I will say this is what Peace Corps is looking for, right? Because one thing that's maybe different from us than other places is we don't care about length. You can actually have a 3-page resume. Peace Corps kind of preaches that we want to see all your experience, regardless of whether you think it's relevant or not. We will kind of decide for that. So don't worry if it's some places say 1-page resume. We don't care about that. But specifically what we're looking for, if it fits into one of these three categories, it's probably going to be pretty good for the Peace Corps: service, leadership, or intercultural experiences. And so really, I'm sure, Chad and Quinn that probably applies to all of our programs, but those are the three kind of big categories. And one of the reasons why I also say intercultural experiences is it doesn't have to be outside of the country, because we try to be as inclusive as possible at the Peace Corps, right? I didn't have the means to travel outside of the country, so we don't want to hold that against people. So, but you can get experience with other cultures within your city, right? So we live in a diverse country. So intercultural experiences is one of the big things that we look for, along with service and leadership. That can be, taking a leadership role in a student organization. It can be volunteering at the Boys and Girls Club. Those are kind of the three big categories that we look for when you're applying to the Peace Corps. And I'll pass it off here to Chad.
Yeah, I mean, it's really great to hear because a lot of the same kind of values apply. What I tell people to kind of focus on is to kind of look at our values and see how is that being able to complement your skill sets. So I literally just actually pull up the page again so I can remember. Number one, we have 10 values, but I'm gonna highlight a couple of them. You have a commitment to a service to a cause greater than self. So this level of altruistic nature of yourself, you're wanting to serve, service is important to you. And then we want to be able to say students first, collaboration always. So that's something that, kind of a student first, student centered kind of approach where it takes a village to be able to raise a child, understanding that relationships and how you develop relationships, not only with students, but your teammates on your team is really, really important. So those are some things that we're looking for. Social justice for all. We do this work because we know that there's still 800,000 kids in the United States, in the quote unquote #1 country in the world, that still drop out of school every single year. And so this is something that is inequitable. We're trying to target specific communities, and the schools that we serve in, which are extremely really high need, under-resourced communities, are the schools that we see a high percentage of school dropouts coming from. And so we're creating a higher pipeline to be able to hopefully bridge that gap. And then really belief in the power of young people. We hire 17 to 25-year-olds because we really believe that you all can change the world. And this started from this idea that there was these two people, our co-founders were Harvard Law School roommates, and they one day thought that maybe one day everybody in the United States would be asking themselves, where are you going to do your city year? And so in the beginning, it was just volunteerism and kind of doing a lot what NCCC was doing, which was going around to these cities and just doing volunteer work. And STEER kind of changed their focus about 20 something years ago, and now we're a strictly education focused nonprofit, but with that same type of mentality behind of wanting to make sure that service is the key part of what we do, and we do our work through the nature of education. So yeah, that's some of the things that I like to talk about. I'll pass it over to.
Yeah, thanks, Chad and John as well. I would probably say AmeriCorps NCCC might be the easiest of the programs to get into. Not that the other ones are real difficult or anything, but as far as just requirements to be a core member, there's nothing specific that we're looking for, because we do such a variety of work. And there's not going to be one focus. In Peace Corps, you have, if you're going to want to be an English teacher, it would be great to have some tutoring or teaching experience. If you wanted to be in city year, having had done some kind of volunteer work or worked with youth in the past is probably going to be an advantage to you. But because with NCCC we do so many different things, it's really just about your flexibility and your commitment to wanting to be kind of similar to what Chad said, be a part of something bigger than yourself. And if you have that motivation to complete the application and answer the short essay questions, and you can pass a federal background check, then you're going to be a really strong candidate to get accepted into the program. Now, the team leader position is going to ask for a little bit more qualifications, and so at that point, having a college degree is going to be a preference, and then having had some kind of leadership experience in managing the interpersonal dynamics of a team. So that could be a camp counselor, or you were the president or vice president of a student organization, or a lot of our team leaders who serve in our program were like residence coordinators, or what do they call that when you're out of college?
RAs.
Yeah, not the head person, but like they're in charge of like a floor RA. A lot of them end up being from RAs. Anytime where you were kind of in a leadership role on campus would be ideal for being a team leader. And if you're a team leader, it looks really good on your resume, obviously, because you're managing this team and you're the primary liaison with our sponsors. But you also get like a larger living stipend that helps pay for anything that you want, that you need during your service year. And that's one thing I'll touch on with, and I'm sure maybe we can weave these into all of our other questions. But the NCCC program, it's funded by taxpayers solely, and so there's no cost or fee associated with the program. They pay for your food, your housing, your living expenses. They give you the education award, which is right now a little over $6,500 at the end of your service, and oftentimes you can get that matched. When I did city year, I think the education award was like $4,400 or something, but the undergrad university I went to in New Hampshire matched it, so it ended up being closer to $9,000. And so tons of advantages, and Peace Corps has partnerships with different universities and colleges too, where you can get a lot of money to help pay for graduate school or your undergrad degree. And I just went, we talked in the very beginning, I just finished a master's degree program at USC graduate school, and it was $70,000 to go to that program. That's just their tuition. But because I did AmeriCorps, I did city year, and because I did Peace Corps, it was completely free, and I didn't have to pay any of it because of merit-based scholarships that were just the result from AmeriCorps and Peace Corps service. And so anyways, to get in, just a passion for wanting to make a difference, and that flexibility of knowing that at any time, you might be deployed to a different location in response to a disaster. So that level of flexibility and that positive attitude would be the two biggest attributes.
That's awesome. And Quinn, that segues perfectly into our next question, which is for you all. What do benefits and compensation look like with your organization? So Quinn, maybe I'll toss it right back to you in case there's anything else you want to add.
Yeah, I got ahead of myself there. I forgot that that was going to be another question. But yeah, you know, the benefits, yes, there's those tangible benefits of within NCCC specifically, we provide housing, food budget, travel to and from the experience. So, you know, the living stipend covers anything that you would need to be comfortable during your service. And so that's money for like toiletries or hygienic products. There's no reason you would be using your own money during an AmeriCorps experience unless you wanted to, you know, buy some souvenirs from somewhere or do something that's an extracurricular activity that's exceeding your living allowance, essentially. And then at the end of your term of service, you do get that $6,500 education award, which you can use to pay back student loans at University of Pacific or leverage that to go and get a graduate school degree. And then again, but the biggest benefit, you know, I think is those intangibles where there's maybe not a direct partnership where they pay for everything and just because you did City or just because you did Peace Corps or AmeriCorps NCCC, but just the fact that, you know, people who do these type of service programs are like the 1% of the 1%, right? So it's like you're doing something that's so unique and that's so important that it's going to stand out on your application, right? When you lived in Ethiopia for 2 years, helping a village get access to clean water, that's going to stand out on your resume. When you worked in an inner city school in Los Angeles, supporting youth stay in school and graduate on time, that's going to look really good on your resume. If you traveled and responded to campfire or were part of the COVID-19 vaccination support with NCCC, it's going to stand out really good on your resume, and you're going to be so much more competitive to get into the colleges you want to for graduate school, for example, or to get those merit-based scholarships that you're seeking, or to get those jobs that you're looking for that want a candidate that has more unique experiences. And then, you know, with NCCC specifically, I mean, it's just an adventure. I mean, you get to build these relationships with a diverse group of young people from all over the country with a variety of lived experiences. And you get to go see these beautiful places like Montana, Alaska, Hawaii, all over California. And you get to do things that nobody else, or, you know, not a lot of people get a chance to do. And so I would say that's a real big benefit. It's just the adventure.
Nice. Yeah, I'll follow up with Quinn because ours is pretty similar with a couple different differences. The biggest difference is that we do not cover, quote unquote, your housing or your food costs. So you get to pick the city that you want to go to. We place you in a school there. We provide you with a uniform, and you get paid a biweekly living stipend, which is minimum $670 every 2 weeks pre-tax, to a maximum, I think, of like $960 now in New York, I think is the highest. And so that is what you use to pay for your living expenses and your food and everything. Many Corps members go on like SNAP benefits here in California because technically you're paid a stipend, right? So you don't necessarily receive an income. So if you're not getting another job, you know, you can put $0 on that application and get like almost $200 from the state to be able to pay for groceries and things like that. So pretty much every Corps member does do that. Almost every single site that I know of provides free transportation. So, you know, you can get like a free bus pass to be able to utilize the public transit within the city to be able to go to and from your school site. And then, like you said, the education award is the same for City Year. City Year has also its own 110 plus colleges and universities that offer anywhere from 25, sometimes up to 100% off reduced tuition for graduate school. And these are scholarships that you do have to apply for. They're not, again, always like going to be given to you. Some universities will just be like, if you just served and you apply and you get in, we'll give you $10,000 every single year. Some of them are, we only offer one scholarship every single year. At UC Davis School of Law, for example, and it's $15,000 for every year that you're in school with us. So it's a lot of different things, and we have programs that are not just education based. Like I said, we have law programs, nonprofit management programs, online programs. So obviously, education, nonprofit, then the bigger one that's coming more and more is the psychology and counseling programs and like social work type of things too. So what I like to say is the benefit is really being able to use this gap year to launch yourself into a career of impact, right? Hence the title. So you can be able to figure out, like, that's probably the biggest benefit of being able to kind of take that year, serve, put that on your resume, and then, you know, launch yourself into a career. So that's the biggest benefits. Yeah, I think that's it. That's it, John.
Yeah, and so Peace Corps here is probably, I guess, understandably a bit different, right? So I'll go through kind of how Peace Corps is different there. So first, Peace Corps is unique where you have 3 months of training. So it's 2 years of service with 3 months of training. That training is entirely in the country, and you will probably be living with a host family for those 3 months, where you are living with a family from that country. And then after those 3 months of training, you go out into service and you serve in a smaller town. You'll probably be the only American in that town. There's a chance you might have another volunteer there. So that's the quick rundown of how the training works. You can also end up getting kind of some certificates. Like, for example, I got a Tefl certificate because I was an English teacher. Tefl is teaching English as a foreign language. That was one really cool thing that Peace Corps kind of gave us the the training for, and now I can put that on my resume. So that works out really well. In terms of the living stipend, Peace Corps, you also get a living stipend. It varies based on your country. And the best way that I can explain it to you all is no matter what sector you're in, because some people will be in health, some people will be in agriculture, some people will be in education, is you'll be paid whatever a local teacher from that town makes. So in Ethiopia, a local teacher made about $130 a month, and I made about $130 a month, right? In Mongolia, it's about $400. In Costa Rica, it's like $350. It depends on where you are. Now, with that being said, you're like, how am I gonna live on $130 a month? Did you serve there 30 years ago? You don't look quite that old. So I served from 2016 to 2018, so not too long ago. And it's cost of living. So I would eat out almost every day, and a meal costs about 7 cents, right? So $130 was plenty. You also have vacation time. People often ask about that in the Peace Corps. You get 2 days per month. The Peace Corps is very flexible with how you use that. You can use that in the country. You can come back to America for a couple of weeks to come visit home. You can use that in another country. There's no like restraints on where you go for those 2 years during your vacation time. That's your vacation time to do what you want. You can have people from America come visit you, no problem. In terms of when you're finished, we don't quite have an education award. We have what's called a readjustment allowance. So at the end of your 2 years of service, you get transferred directly into your bank account a little over $10,000, because we understand that in the Peace Corps, if you're making $130 a month and then you're readjusting to America, you might need money for a down payment on a car or a security deposit on a apartment, right? So that's why we give you that $10,000 there. The way I always look at it as a recruiter is that you're saving $5,000 per year. Like, that's pretty good out of college, right? If you're saving $5,000 per year, pretty much in any job ever, like, that's pretty good. So that's my spin on it, that you can use that $10,000 however you please. In terms of some education benefits that you get, we have what's called the Coverdale Fellows Program. With over 130 universities around the country, you get at least 33% off tuition. So kind of similar, this is where we get kind of similar with AmeriCorps It's a year. Some places will match it, but it's an official program where if you go into Coverdale Fellows into Google, pull up the Peace Corps website, it'll say exactly how much each university offers. So like, for example, University of Oregon, it's a complete full ride. At Georgetown, it's 33% off, and you're still on the hook for $70,000 because Georgetown's really expensive. But they are very kind of explicit about exactly how much that is worth. But as kind of Quinn mentioned and Chad mentioned, there's ways to get it matched as well. But that's the kind of official program there. So that's a little bit how that works. One thing to definitely note about the Peace Corps too, outside of your living stipend, your housing is completely covered by the Peace Corps. So Peace Corps finds your house for you. You don't ever have to worry about any of that, because you're probably thinking, if I'm living in a rural place, how does that work? How do I find a house? Peace Corps has been to your town. Peace Corps has found a house for you. Your town has already asked you. They have said, we want a Peace Corps volunteer here. So we say, okay, sounds good. Well, we need to, check off some boxes here. So one of those boxes is finding a house that has certain requirements. Like, you have to have a certain amount of neighbors, but you can't have too many neighbors, right? It has to have requirements there. So your house is found for by the Peace Corps. It's paid for by the Peace Corps. Also, your medical and dental coverage completely covered by the Peace Corps. Anything you can dream of is covered by the Peace Corps. I got kidney stones while in service, and that sucks. I would not recommend those to anybody. Drink lots of water. If you're like, I'm not drinking enough water, do it. Don't get kidney stones. But Peace Corps, Peace Corps will cover everything. we have a 24/7 team of doctors that are doctors for that country, for those volunteers who are in that country. So they are on call 24/7. I got my kidney stones at about 3 a.m. So my neighbors like came into my house and were like, John, why are you like yelling? And I'm like, I have kidney stones. So the doctors were able to talk to my neighbors about getting me to the hospital, right? So it is an all-encompassing, I chipped a tooth that covered that. It's an all-encompassing medical coverage there. Because that's one of the very valid concerns people have. They say, well, like, what's the healthcare coverage like? Well, it's as good as we can do. So I think that covers all the questions about compensations and benefits in the Peace Corps. One thing I'll add about the Peace Corps is that you have a lot of autonomy in the Peace Corps. Whereas like with NCCC, like they're like, here's a project, like, right, like it's short-term, high impact, right? So they're like, hey, come build houses, right? In Peace Corps, we're like, hey, go live in a place, listen to the community, see what they want, right? So it's much different where we'll give you some ideas about projects, but ultimately it's kind of up to you. We say go to that community, listen to that community. So that's one way that we differ a little bit, and why it's a little longer is that there isn't the same structure a lot of times in the Peace Corps. Now, if you're a teacher, there's more structure, but there is just room for being able to have a lot of autonomy over what projects you do end up doing. So that's one unique thing about the Peace Corps. And with that, I will shut up and let Alyssa ask, I think, one more question.
No worries. Thank you all so much. So last question here before we open it up to a Q&A from the students. So if we could just go through this really quickly, if you all want to touch on maybe just some skills you learned during your time and that, others that you work with or, went through this with, skills, career development, all that good stuff. So Chad, I'll start with you on this one.
Yeah, I'll just touch on two big ones that I think I still use today. So the big one that I learned was having difficult conversations. When you're working with a team of people for an entire year, 40, 50 hours a week, you're naturally going to have some consequence or some disagreements. And there's going to be some difficult times. And even with students who are, you're having a hard time building a relationship with, and you're not getting somewhere with, it can be really anxiety inducing to have those kind of conversations when you're an adult, when you've never had a full-time job before and you've been in school and you can kind of just go to a different, on-campus job. So those were some of the big things I learned. And the other thing is just like, where do I want to do my impact work? So like I said earlier, I figured out that those individual one-on-one type of conversations are really what made my bucket filled at the end of the day, and being able to do that on a wider scale was something I really desired. And I didn't think I was going to be able to do that as a teacher. And so I took my skill sets to South Beach and wanted to anybody at LeBron James. Just kidding. And decided to go the MFT route and be able to impact communities and people that way while really building like one-on-one relationships. So yeah, I'll kind of stop it there. But yeah. Go ahead, Quinn.
Yikes! My mic had I couldn't find my mouse cursor for a second, but I found it, thankfully. Crisis averted. So the skills. So I actually did not serve in AmeriCorps NCCC specifically, which is the program that I've been speaking about this afternoon. I'll briefly touch on what I have observed all of the members, experiencing and gaining from that experience. And because NCCC works in so many different sectors and with so many different nonprofits and government organizations, yes, there's a lot of different skills that you get, like just how to do basic home construction, how to be a better painter depending on the project, how to do trail building and bridge building. I mean, there's so many of those hard skills that you get from physically being a part of the program. But I think the biggest thing would just be like the interpersonal skills and also the networking opportunities and skills. I mean, you're working with so many different sectors of different types of nonprofits and local government organizations over the course of your 10 months. And so you're getting so much exposure and then insider information about what it is that these different types of organizations work for. And so I think it just gives you such a leg up on future career opportunities because you've been able to briefly work with those type of organizations. With NCCC, like a ton of our alumni go on to get permanent positions with organizations like FEMA, for example. One of our previous graduating classes, like 40% of all of our members went on to get permanent positions with FEMA, it's very difficult to get government jobs, and FEMA is very competitive. And so having had like that direct disaster response on your resume and to be able to say, well, I did work with FEMA on this project and this is what we were able to do. I understood the logistics involved. It just gives you such a leg up on the competition when you're applying for those type of government jobs, as well as anything within City or Peace Corps, AmeriCorps NCCC. The nonprofit sector is just so, they always look for individuals who have that type of service experience. And so the skills that you gain and just demonstrating that you can commit to something, and that you show up every day and you get your work done. I mean, it just goes a long way. But for me, within City Year and within Peace Corps, I mean, I could just go on as far as like, there's so many skills. I mean, I did City Year when I was 18, so it was basic life skills like how to do my laundry, how to do my dishes on my own, how to pay my own rent and bills, stuff that I had never done before. City Year was the first experience I had living on my own. And then when you go into a place like, when you do something like the Peace Corps, I did that after undergrad. I mean, to go live and work in a different country where you don't speak the language, where you don't have an insight into the culture, and to spend, the first year of my time in Peace Corps was all just about gaining trust and building relationships and starting to feel comfortable in that new place. And that was just incredibly life-changing, and so much interpersonal growth on just, I mean, I would say one of the things that I've taken away is just being able to work better with diverse populations. I mean, just my level of empathy and compassion when I meet, a recent immigrant here in this country who's struggling to learn English, or maybe has a language barrier, immediately for me, I'm like, well, I've been there. I know what it's like to go to another country and struggle with speaking the local language, but trying desperately to communicate, and having that level of insight, which I would never otherwise have, because English was the dominant language and I'm a native English speaker. And so not having had that Peace Corps experience, I wouldn't be able to relate to other Americans who don't speak English as a first language in the same way. And so just my level of empathy and personal growth from both City Year and Peace Corps were huge skill sets for me.
And I'll be real concise here because I know we have some time for questions. There are some hard skills in Peace Corps, right? You're going to learn new language, right? You're going to have 4 hours of language class per day for 3 months. So there's some hard skills that you'll have. Education, right? Like I was in the education program as a teacher, right? I learned how to teach in front of a classroom of 60 to 70 kids. That's not easy. It's never easy. And then third, the one that I'll talk a little bit more about is project design and management. So about 6 months into Peace Corps, they give you a training session. They say, hey, look, come with a counterpart from your town. We're going to train you on, hey, working to get a grant. If you need one. If you don't need one, sounds good. And they say like, hey, what's a big problem in your town that we can solve? And so in my school, it was very obvious. We taught in Lawless Secondary School, they taught IT classes from books. We had 2 computers for something like 500 kids. So we had no computer lab, right? I'm learning from computer labs. You learn computer skills from books, not great. So they trained us how to write a grant. They gave us examples of how to do that. One priority of Peace Corps is that any grant has to be funded by the community, at least 25%. And so that can be labor, it can be materials, it can be things like that. In my case, for computers, right? Like it's very black and white. You need money to buy computers, you bring computers, the grant is completed. So like I had to go around with Ganati, my counterpart, and just ask, people from the town, people from the education department, from the school for money. And I said, hey, look, I promise we'll get, if we raise $1,200, we'll end up getting $5,000. But it was really kind of a test of my relationship, because I just had a promise, right? And I had to, you know, ask for money. I was like, here's the official papers, but it was still kind of like my work. So really taking a grant from an idea to a new computer lab in a school is like a very good, very like long process, right? That's well, you know, it doesn't happen overnight. It takes, you know, we had to write 2 different grants, one in English, one in ORME for the language there. So, so that's one, you know, really strong skill that you'll learn in the Peace Corps that I really appreciate today. Not only the hard grant writing, but the patience to take a project from beginning, development, and implementation is very challenging, and you know, takes a lot of flexibility. So those are some things I learned in the Peace Corps.
This has been awesome. Thank you all so much. I know just me personally, this has been so insightful. So with that, we'll open it up to questions. So students, feel free to drop them in the chat, come off mute if you have any questions for our panelists.
If there's no questions, I have some. I was jotting things down because I was so inspired by everything you all were saying. So it sounds like, you know, you all served either your own organization, or Quinn, you served, you know, your colleagues. So you all are in, I guess, professional staffing roles now with your organization. So kind of what motivated you to still serve in this capacity, you know, after being service members? Kind of like, what's your purpose and like, what's your why of still, you know, doing this work and recruiting members to come work for your organizations? Because I think it's really tells a story of, you know, why you're still around and wanting to get, you know, members to join. Obviously something, whether it's the communities you serve or the areas that you are helping, you know, whether, you know, it's a disaster or education is your passion. So what is your, you know, what drives you to come to work every day, and what's your why of, you know, still serving these organizations after being, you know, service members?
I love that question, Michelle. Thank you so much for asking. Across all of City Year, so not only at the site level, at the headquarters level in Boston, recruiters, admissions, marketing teams, over 50% of City Year staff members are alumni. So we'd love to hire alums. I think 2 reasons why a lot of people come back, like myself. Number one, their core member experience was deeply, deeply impactful to their soul and what they wanted to do in communities. And they felt like this was a mission that was going to be ongoing. And number 2 is when you think about a workplace that you really want to be able to invest in, I don't know, it doesn't really get much better than City Year sometimes. You know, we talk about self-care. We talk about social justice issues. We talk about giving people time off and making sure that you're respected as an employee, and as well that this is, just because this is your passion doesn't mean that we get to take advantage of you for that. Like, you get to make money and you get to do this. So I think it's kind of like twofold. Like, when I've worked at other jobs, and other jobs just don't talk like this. And we don't do, before every single meeting, we talk about like joys, ripples, and appreciations for your team. Like, we just don't do that in other businesses, right? That's not important. And for us, it is. And I think that's why we have such a strong culture.
Yeah, I mean, I really can't say much more than Chad there. Our bottom line is helping support people, right? Is helping people. So what more could you ask for, right? I changed my career to when I joined the Peace Corps. I was working in radio, and I met my wife. I, you know, learned how to teach. I learned a new language. So I think, you know, it's very selfish, right? I've worked for this organization because it changed my life and made me who I am today. So I'm very fortunate to be able to, you know, represent this organization in this capacity. So that's why I'm here today, and, you know, really feel passionate about what I'm able to, you know, speak about, because it has affected me, you know, immensely.
Same thing as John and Chad, just the ability to give back to the organizations that have given so much to me as an individual, and then touching on what Chad was talking about, I mean, I could be working for a company or organization where the mission is to sell 90,000 widgets before the end of the fiscal year, yet I worked for organizations where the mission was to build world peace and friendship in Peace Corps context, or to develop leaders and serve communities in the AmeriCorps NCCC context. And so, you know, just that mission-driven focus of the organization is what keeps me wanting to work in national service.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing. Did we have a question?
Yeah, actually, I had a question. What are the most common sort of destinations when going abroad?
Yeah, I think that's a question for Peace Corps. So the most common, the biggest countries are Ethiopia is very big, Zambia is very big. About half our positions are in Africa, so those are very large. We also have Peru is one of our biggest countries. It depends basically if you speak Spanish or not. Mongolia is also actually very large in Central Asia there. So those are, it also depends on what you want, right? You can go with a big cohort that has a bigger infrastructure, or you can go with a smaller program, like in Tonga in the South Pacific, there's only about 10 volunteers per cohort. So there's pros and cons of each. Whereas like in Ghana is another one of our big programs where there's a long establishment of Peace Corps, or you can go somewhere that's new, like Montenegro. We are just expanding to Montenegro. Well, there isn't any infrastructure for the Peace Corps. So it's also kind of unique there where you can kind of be the infrastructure. You can create it, but that comes with the challenge itself. So but largely in Africa is most of our positions, but there's also, you know, different countries around the world that we also have large kind of outposts.
All right, any more questions? I think you guys just did such a great job answering throughout, you know, the whole discussion we had. So guess we'll open it up one more time. Any other questions? All right, well, again, thank you all so much, John, Quinn, Chad. This has been so insightful. We've been recording this, so we'll share a recording with everyone in case you want to go back and watch and, you know, relearn anything that you all shared here. So thank you, Quinn, for dropping your information. Chad, John, if you're open to it as well, if students want to reach out directly. But again, thank you all so much. We really appreciate your time, and students, thank you for coming. All right, have a great day, y'all.